He was born in a he was born in a valley of coal smoke and ambition. Henry Clay Frick came into the world in 1849 in rural Pennsylvania. Thin soil, low hills, and the scent of iron in the air. His father was a modest farmer who dreamed too small for the age he lived in. Henry dreamed larger. By the time he was 20, America was bursting at its seams. Steel, railroads, oil, finance, every industry was a ladder, and every ladder reached toward a private empire. The Civil War had ended, the Gilded Age had begun, and men who could organize chaos were becoming gods. Frick's gift was precision. Where others saw heat and noise, he saw ratios, margins, efficiency. He began with coke, the purified coal that powered steel furnaces. In the narrow valleys south of Pittsburgh, he bought up small operations, undercut rivals, and built a network of ovens so vast it turned night into flame. By his mid-20s, he controlled 40% of the region's coke output. He was short, meticulous, and famously humorless. Workers called him the Little Giant. He never smoked, never drank, never apologized. To him, sentiment was a cost, discipline was profit. When the young Scottish immigrant Andrew Carnegie came calling, Frick found his mirror image. Ambition polished into art. Carnegie had vision, Frick had will. Together, they built the most powerful steel empire the world had ever seen. Railroads, bridges, ships, skyscrapers, all of it ran through their furnaces. Yet Frick was not content to be a partner. He wanted a kingdom of his own, one untouched by soot or sweat. In 1879, after a rare vacation to the mountains east of Pittsburgh, Frick discovered a quiet lake held back by an aging earth and timber dam. The place was serene. Pine forests, cool mist, mirrored water. He bought it. Then he invited a circle of industrial barons to join him. They called it the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. Membership was exclusive. Andrew Carnegie, Andrew Mellon, and a dozen other titans of industry. For a small fortune each, they gained access to a private Eden above the town of Johnstown, 14 miles downstream. They wanted peace, but they also wanted control. The old dam, originally built for a canal system decades earlier, was crumbling. Its clay core leaked, its spillways were half blocked by screens meant to keep fish from escaping. Engineers warned that heavy rain could bring catastrophe. Frick dismissed them. He ordered cosmetic repairs, lowered the dam's height to widen the road across it, and stocked the lake with trout. To reinforce the new earthwork, his men packed it with straw and clay. It looked picturesque. It was fatally weak. The locals below worried. They had reason to. Johnstown was a working-class city nestled at the confluence of two rivers. A bowl surrounded by hills. Steel mills roared night and day. The people depended on the very men who vacationed above them. They wrote letters, begged for inspections. The club ignored them. For Frick and his peers, the mountain lake was not just leisure, it was symbolism. They had conquered nature in business. Now they would tame it for pleasure. They built boathouses, lodges, verandas hung with lanterns. They threw parties where champagne flowed and orchestras played while thunder rolled beyond the peaks. To the townspeople, those lights on the mountain looked like stars of another world. Then came May 31st, 1889. For 3 days, rain had lashed the Alleghenies. Streams turned into torrents. The lake swelled against the dam until the caretakers could hear it groaning. They tried to dig a spillway, but the clay turned to sludge. Riders were sent to warn Johnstown. Few believed them. After all, the dam had held before. At 3:10 p.m., the wall gave way. 20 million tons of water, an entire valley's worth, collapsed into the river channel below. It traveled faster than a train, gathering trees, houses, livestock, locomotives, everything. When it reached Johnstown 40 minutes later, it hit with the force of artillery. Buildings were pulverized. The stone bridge on the edge of town trapped the debris, and the whole pile caught fire. People burned alive atop a flood they could not escape. When the water finally receded, more than 2,200 were dead. Families erased, children swept miles downstream. It was the deadliest U.S. disaster of the 19th century. News spread worldwide. Reporters described it as the wrath of God. But God had nothing to do with it. The dam belonged to Henry Clay Frick and his friends. In the smoldering wreckage, townspeople found fragments of the club's boats and wine bottles. They knew who to blame. Frick, safe in Pittsburgh, issued a statement of sympathy. He sent money, ordered relief trains, expressed sorrow, but he admitted no guilt. The club's lawyers argued that the disaster was an act of God. that no man could have foreseen such rain. It was a lie the law allowed. The victims sued. Not one of the millionaires paid a cent in damages. The courts ruled in their favor. Public outrage was immense. Newspapers depicted the club members as modern aristocrats who had traded human lives for weekend comfort. Editorial cartoons showed a golden dam bursting under the weight of greed. Frick ignored them. He rarely spoke of the flood again. When asked privately if he felt remorse, he replied, "Regret is for those who fail." Yet those close to him noticed a change. He worked longer hours, barked at assistants, and began building a fortress-like mansion in Pittsburgh with iron shutters and armed guards. He filled it with art, paintings of serene landscapes untouched by chaos. Perhaps he was trying to paint over the sound of water. The flood had shown the world that private power could cause public ruin, but it also showed that wealth could rewrite consequence. Frick had survived the first disaster of his making. The second would come years later when his own empire turned on him. After the Johnstown Flood, Henry Clay Frick learned that silence could outlast scandal. When people shouted, he built higher walls. When the world cursed his name, he bought more art. He emerged from the disaster wealthier, harder, and convinced of a single truth. In America, memory fades faster than money. The Steel War. 2 years later, Frick's focus shifted back to the furnaces. The nation was rebuilding, and steel was its skeleton. Andrew Carnegie wanted expansion. Frick wanted control. Their partnership, once a fusion of genius and will, was turning into a duel. Carnegie believed in philanthropy, at least in theory. He wrote essays about the moral duty of the rich. Frick believed in order. He once said, "A business is a machine. The less it feels, the better it works." In 1892, the tension erupted in Homestead, Pennsylvania. The Homestead Steel Works, one of the crown jewels of their empire, was due for a new labor contract. The workers, organized under the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers, demanded better pay. Frick saw the union as disease. He prepared for war. He locked out the men, surrounded the mill with barbed wire, and built wooden watchtowers along the river. Locals called it Fort Frick. He hired 300 armed Pinkerton agents to retake the mill. On July 6, 1892, as dawn broke, barges carrying the Pinkertons drifted up the Monongahela River. Thousands of striking workers waited on shore. Someone fired first. No one ever proved who, and the battle lasted all day. By nightfall, 7 workers and 3 Pinkertons were dead, dozens wounded. When the agents surrendered, the crowd beat them bloody before letting them go. Frick ordered the state militia in. The strike was crushed. He had won, but at a terrible cost. Newspapers called him the most hated man in America. Artists drew him with horns and a whip. Carnegie, safe in Scotland, condemned the violence from afar, pretending innocence. Frick took the blame and bore it like armor. 3 weeks later, an anarchist named Alexander Berkman entered Frick's office with a revolver. He shot him twice in the neck and stabbed him before being subdued. Frick, bleeding, refused medical care until he finished signing documents. He survived. The public perversely admired his toughness, but the wound that didn't heal was invisible. He began to mistrust everyone, even Carnegie. Their partnership dissolved into lawsuits and silence. Frick sold his stake and walked away one of the richest men in America and one of the loneliest. The Palace of Redemption. Wealth, to Frick, had always been proof of order, but after Homestead, it became refuge. He built a mansion on Fifth Avenue in New York. 4 stories of limestone and iron. He called it the Frick House, though it felt more like a citadel. Inside, he gathered the world's beauty, Vermeer, Rembrandt, Turner, Goya. He filled those rooms with silence so thick it echoed. The city roared outside. He paced marble floors, counting minutes between visitors. He attended the opera, but rarely smiled. His children spoke of him in whispers. His wife, Adelaide, endured rather than adored him. When reporters asked why he collected art, Frick replied, "Because it stays where you put it." Perhaps that was the heart of his obsession. Paintings did not argue, water did not rise, canvases did not strike. Beauty was controllable in a way that people were not. Yet, even in his fortress, ghosts followed him. The Johnstown Flood became a legend retold every spring when the rains came. Survivors grew old, but their stories did not. Whenever he attended a gala, someone would glance at him and whisper, "That's the man who drowned a town." He pretended not to hear. The second flood, the turn of the century, brought a new kind of deluge, not of water, but of wealth. The Gilded Age elite had learned the lessons of Frick's generation. Hide ruthlessness behind philanthropy. Carnegie endowed libraries, Rockefeller built universities, Frick built walls. When Carnegie offered a reconciliation dinner in 1900, Frick declined. "Tell him," he said, "I will meet him in hell where we both belong." By then, his fortune exceeded $100 million, a staggering sum in those days, but it bought him no peace. He battled gout, insomnia, and lawsuits. He saw his peers praised as visionaries while he remained a villain in print. He began drafting plans for a final act that would outlive them all. He would leave his art to the public. Not to seek forgiveness, he didn't believe in that, but to prove permanence. In his will, he decreed that after his death, the mansion would become a museum for the education and enjoyment of all persons whomsoever. The language was deliberate, all persons. Even the kind who once worked in his mills, even the descendants of Johnstown. He called it a gift. History called it atonement. In 1919, his health failed. Doctors ordered rest. He ignored them. On December 2nd, 1919, he died in his sleep, age 70. His coffin rested in the music room, surrounded by the paintings he had purchased as insurance against memory. Outside, the world moved on. The steel mills he built roared into the age of automobiles and wars. The dam at South Fork was never rebuilt. The valley remained scarred. Johnstown flooded again in 1936 and 1977, though never with the same fury. Each time, newspapers mentioned his name as if the mountain itself refused to forget. The echo and the lesson. Today, the Frick collection still stands on Fifth Avenue, quiet, immaculate, free of soot. Visitors walk its halls without knowing that the marble floors were paid for by fire and water. They admire the stillness of Vermeer's Officer and Laughing Girl, unaware that the man who bought it once commanded 1,000 furnaces. Time, as Frick predicted, has made memory polite. His reputation softened into curiosity, then into culture. Yet his story remains the perfect parable of American ambition. That progress and peril are two sides of the same coin. He conquered nature twice, once with steel, once with arrogance, and both times it struck back. The first flood drowned a valley. The second drowned his conscience. What makes his tale endure isn't just a scale of tragedy, but the symmetry of it. He wanted permanence in a world built on motion. He wanted beauty without consequence, wealth without weight. And in that contradiction, he became a symbol. Every age has its Fricks. Men who believe that power can be isolated, that private luxury exists apart from public risk. The technologies change, the industries evolve, but the pattern remains. A dam built too thin, a system stretched too far, a warning ignored until it collapses. When the water rises, whether literal or financial, it carries the same debris: pride, neglect, denial. Frick's story asks a question the modern world still can't answer. How much control is enough before it becomes destruction? If he could walk among us now, seeing towers of glass instead of furnaces, he would recognize the gleam in our eyes, the same confidence that nature or markets will obey us because we will it so. He might even smile, because he knew better than anyone that empires don't need enemies to fall. They need only reflection.